as part of leaving school at 16, I was also it was suggested that I actually leave home at 16 as well. My dad passed away 2 or 3 years ago, and I looked at it. I thought I spent a lot of time. I probably spent a lot of time as an angry kid, teens and 20s or whatever, as an angry person. But you can look at it two ways. You can either say, was he being exceptionally harsh? Well, I'm sure he was at times. Or was he suggesting, did he see something in me that suggested that maybe I would be better off forging my own route in life? I'd rather, I'm at peace with thinking it was the latter. With the row particularly, there's some times when you're just in your thoughts. I've put at peace the fact that I don't need to challenge myself, don't have to challenge myself anymore, but prove myself. And I remember sort of saying to myself, if that's not effing good enough for people now, then I really don't care.
What's your one rule for living a fulfilled life?
Can I give you two?
Can.
The first one is actually from that 12 rules to life, and that is judge yourself from the person against the person you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. And that's one. And then the second thing is give more than you take.
I believe everyone has a story to tell. Through seeking true, authentic insights about the entrepreneurial journey, I provide a platform for our peers to share their stories and inspire those that listen. This is the County Business Talks podcast, produced by H2 Productions. Okay, welcome to another episode of the County Business Talks podcast. My guest this week is the creator and CEO of Sales Enabla. He's a sales enablement expert with a variety of sales-related businesses spanning 3 decades. He's a speaker, mentor, non-executive director, Ironman, channel swimmer, and most recently, to add to the repertoire, he's rode the Atlantic Ocean. I'm delighted to welcome the inspirational Matt Garman to the podcast. Matt, how you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, mate, listen, amazing to have you on. It was so strange. At the time of recording this, we're a few days after the Wolo Foundation ball, where you presented them with a cheque of £42,500, I believe, for doing that, which is, mate, absolutely incredible achievement.
Yeah, that was it's quite strange actually, because I've known them for a long time. We've ended up raising about 85,000 or something. So we're raising money for Wolo and also Prostate Cancer UK. There's still some money, dribs and drabs, coming in as well. So we gave them a cheque for 42,500 on Saturday, and it's just it's mind-boggling, really, because it's a lot of money and something we're really proud of.
Yeah, it should be, mate. And look, and we're going to get into the row and stuff a little bit later. But look, we're gonna just jump straight in and kick things off. So look, just start your story off. Tell me about what sort of life was like growing up for you. Something about those sort of early years has shaped, I guess, who you are today.
I suppose everyone's got a story.
That's the tagline, mate.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story to tell. Here we go.
I'm the middle child. Three boys. We grew up in the Midlands. Dad was from Yorkshire. Mum was from Sussex. I think we moved to Seaford when I was about 11. I think there was a bit more opportunity further down south for the family. So I come from a very academic family. And I suppose that was probably the start of me realising I'm a little bit different. Dad was a consulting engineer. Mum's a high-level music teacher. Older brother's a doctor of mathematics. Younger brother's a doctor of horticulture. And I think I got a sort of 25-metre swimming badge. I think that was about the end of it. So no, I felt I did. All joking aside, middle one. So I'm not the firstborn, not the baby. Happy childhood, very sporting. I suppose when I got to my early teens, I probably realised I was a little bit different.
Okay.
and
In
not
what
all,
way?
and
Like
not all, not all in good,
So from an academic point of view, then not as academic as your
I
brothers.
I would describe myself as bright and sharp, but I just wouldn't. I was one of those kids in the class, and I said it a few times to people. I was one of those kids in the class, and I was kind of middle of the road, slightly below, but I just didn't. I didn't concentrate on the exams bit, so I was kind of middle of it. Most of the middle classes, I wasn't in the slow lot, I wasn't in the fast lane. I was kind of middle of the road. And I was one of those kids where, the teacher would be saying something and a couple of minutes later I'd grasp it. I've got it now. Yeah, got it. Yeah. But by that time they've moved on to another subject or another stage in the lesson. And I'm kind of middle of the road, but always quite chirpy. But I didn't concentrate on my exams and didn't put enough effort in there.
Do you think, like, looking back at the school, just didn't engage with the curriculum the way it was then, or?
I think school. I mean, I go back to my children's school, and they go to the school I went to, and it's chalk and cheese. Yeah. So it's completely different. I think there's some teachers that I really liked and I really looked up to. There's some other teachers probably that I just didn't, you didn't kind of warm to for one reason or not warm to. I didn't dislike anyone, but you didn't feel quite as engaged in their subjects. There were some teachers, very passionate teachers, and you engage in the subject. And I feel that certainly looking at my children's stuff, it's a lot more. There's obviously so much more focus on the achievements and the getting the exam grades and all this sort of stuff. So, I hats off to teachers. They do an incredible job. It's not something I can do, and the pressures that you get as well. So, I just drifted along a little bit. If I'm being altogether, and I drifted. I had two interests at school. One was going fishing on the beach at Seaford, and the next thing was playing rugby with my friends as well. And that was about the long and the short of it. But any sport would have been good.
Okay. So was there an ambition when you was younger? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do for work? Was there, other than playing rugby, I guess, but was there a real passion?
I mean, I'm 53 this year, and I've got to be honest with you, Sam. I honestly don't. I say it. I'm not joking, and I say it to my kids. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I really don't. I did the. I got to the end of school, did some exams. I think I've got a maths O level somewhere, if I'm being honest with you. So it wasn't a complete. Well, it probably depends on what your scoring rate was. But no, we finished in May when I was 16. The week later, I got myself a job as a T-boy on a trawler in New Haven.
Nice.
So I went off and basically made tea and gutted fish for a while.
Wow. How long did you do that for?
I ended up doing it for just under 5 years on a boat in New Haven, and it taught me a lot. Taught me a lot about myself. It was outdoors. Some of it was fun. Some of it was less fun. I never thought it was going to be me for forever, sort of thing. But there were two things that happened. I bought my first flat when I was 19.
Wow. Okay.
And I remember walking into the estate agent with what was a Safeways bag full of cash at the time, which is money I'd saved in my bedsit for the deposit for the flat. So I bought my first flat at 19 when it was, if anyone's old enough to remember, 14.25% interest rates.
Wow.
So pretty early on into me buying a flat and going into negative equity, I realised that it might not have been the greatest decision, and I needed to find some steady income. And the second thing was one of the guys on that tied up on one of the other boats in the harbour. He was killed on deck on a boat.
Wow.
And at 21, I just other pressures and stuff like that. I just thought, you know what, I need to probably go and do something different. The challenge you have then is with next to no qualifications is what to do. So I was in the White Lion pub in Seaford with a mate of mine one evening, and he was a milkman with a co-op. He used to be he was employed, and then he was moaning the fact that they just franchised all the rounds, And I said, well, so what? He said, well, you see, what that means, he said, I've got to buy the franchise, and I lose on I'm self-employed now, so I lose on my holiday. And I said to him, and bearing in mind I'm looking to get out of fishing, I said, well, can't be that difficult. How many there are you? So that evening we came up with an idea where I set up a rota system where we got 9 milkmen that were on the franchisees, and I set up a rota that evening. So they got 4 weeks holiday, they get 4 or 5 weeks holiday a year, which was basically what they got there when they're employed. And I got some steady money for what was a couple of years, until I just got a bit bored with it all. And and I was mail shotted by a life insurance company. Come and run your own business without the overheads. And I wasn't bright enough to work out at the time that sort of meant commission only selling life insurance. And that was my first foray into sales, I suppose.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a long, convoluted answer.
No, not at all. No, but I actually want to, before we go into the sales bit, and I just want to go, because you mentioned offline that obviously your older brother is a doctor of mathematics and stuff, and your younger brother as well has gone down it. What was your mum and dad's thoughts about going and doing the fishing for you?
Not great. I've got to be honest with you, Sam. Not great. And something I kind of moved over, and I'm happy to be. I mean, it was pretty clear that I wasn't going to go down the route that my folks wanted me to go, or had aspirations for. So as part of leaving school at 16, I was also it was suggested that I actually leave home at 16 as well, which I suppose that's a tough one that people say that's a tough one, but I don't know. My dad passed away 2 or 3 years ago, and I looked at it. I thought I spent a lot of time. I probably spent a lot of time as an angry kid, angry teens and 20s or whatever, as an angry person. But you can look at it 2 ways. You can either say, was he being exceptionally harsh? Well, I'm sure he was at times. Or was he did he see something in me that suggested that maybe I would be better off forging my own route in life? I'd rather, I'm at peace with thinking it was the latter. And I feel pretty comfortable I haven't always felt comfortable about it, but I feel comfortable with that. And I actually said at his funeral that I'd like to think that was a masterstroke. I feel good with it now anyway.
Right. Fair enough. But, mate, thanks for sharing. I get through that period though. Had you had a good relationship though with your dad? After that was suggested that you moved out, was there, or was that?
It was always. Hey, I knew I was different. I knew I was different from my brothers. They obviously went to uni, and obviously they've done very, very well, which is great. It was fraught at times. I suppose always speak to each other. I think there was a period when Dad was working away overseas for a bit where we probably didn't talk much, but I felt I was different, but in the same breath, never real animosity. I think if anything else, it was just maybe a few things that I got in my head that, angry kid, I've got that's maybe I'm not good enough, and maybe that's what's inspired. I think that's probably what's pushed me and inspired me to. It's like almost like, well, I'll bloody show you kind of thing. And I think that's. I think I've spent a lot of time just sort of probably trying to, in a wrong way, in an unhealthy way, trying to make up for what I felt was not good, and in trying to do other things.
Yeah. And then what about like with your brothers? What are that relationship like? Are you all close as the three of you, or?
Yeah, I know we're close. We're having dinner in a couple of weeks' time. Everyone's coming around to my place, and all families and children and stuff like that. No, we're all good. I mean, I think it's quite. I remember a particular meal we had a long time ago, and it's quite interesting. So my older brother's very, very well qualified, done some great stuff. Very, very clever guy. He's one of those kids that took his maths O level when he was about 6 or something like, one of those ones sort of thing. It wasn't 6, but whenever it was, it felt like he was about 6. And so he was amazing at all that sort of stuff. And David had a passion for plants and stuff like that, and got into, he's done some great stuff. But no, they always sort of took the mickey out of me, and they've all got sort of letters after the name, and it was quite fun. I remember one lunch they suggested a few letters after my name as well, but anyway, it didn't go anywhere. Not the ones that I would have wanted, I expect.
But today, like now, with just where we are right now, maybe go back obviously a couple of years prior to your dad sort of passing away, like all the stuff you have achieved in business, and you have challenges, the channel and Ironman and things like that. Do they look at that now differently? To, like you said, always a little bit different. But do they look at that? Did you get the feeling that he was really proud of you, what you've achieved? Did he say that, or what?
Yeah, I think so. All joking aside, I think Dad sort of became my probably my biggest fan. Last 5 years or so of his life. And it's interesting because with the row, I mean, that we can talk about that, but I mean that I've done the other bits and pieces and done okay in business, sold a couple of businesses, but with the row particularly, there's some times when you're just in your thoughts, and I remember one particular night rowing. It was a dark old night. We were doing all right. It was just dark. Sometimes you listen to music, sometimes you listen to audio books, and we worked a shift pattern, so we were one person rowing at night. We dropped down to one rower, and I was just reflecting about those sorts of things, and I was I put at peace the fact that I don't need to challenge myself, don't have to challenge myself anymore, but prove myself, and I remember sort of saying to myself, if that's not effing good enough for people now, then I really don't care.
Wow. It's strange. I listen to you talk about that, and you look at that journey and that path on all them things. Like you say, why do we do these things? Like an Ironman, it's not potentially normal to get up and go and train and come on an Ironman and do the things and row in the Atlantic Ocean and swim the channel and them type of things. They're not, I guess, normal things that we just get up every day. I think I'll swim the channel today. Do you know what I mean? There's loads of training, there's all that stuff that has to go into it. But there's got to be a certain type of mindset to get you to that stage, and there's got to be a certain mindset to inspire you to get up and train and do that. And what's that motivation, I guess, behind it? And interesting to you talk about, I guess, like you said, that feeling of I've got to prove to not just yourself but other people around you that we need that external validation sometimes from other people to go, like, this is what I've done, this is what I've achieved. And actually,
yeah, I think it's unhealthy half the time, most of the time, to be honest with you. I think a lot of it, and it comes to I think a lot of this, whether it's the business stuff or whether it's the sports stuff, I think a lot of this comes down to vision. And in order to get that piece going and to get that momentum going, and also commit as well. I hear people and they say, so I'm thinking of doing this, I'm thinking of doing that, and my response to that is just write your name down, sign up, do it, because then you're in it then, and then it's a case of so be very forthright in your language. I'm going to, and I think. To me, it's the vision, and it's the same in business. It's like start building a picture and a frame of reference of what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, and things like the Ironman, or when we come on the beach in France, start building up a picture. What does that look like? And with the row, I was on the video looking at I was on YouTube looking at these boats, these rowers, and they turn up in Antigua. And they've got beards, and they've got they've lost weight, and the flares are going off. There's people cheering, and to me it's the vision, and I want to feel that. Yeah. But I think it comes down to commitment, and I mean, my son is 16. He's one of the youngest RFU qualified referees in the country, and he's refereeing men's rugby at 16 years old, and he's kind of being fast tracked. And he said he came back from. I'm proud of them, both my son and my daughter, but came back from a careers thing, and they asked him. They said, "Have you thought anything about what you want to do when you leave school?" And he said, "I told him, Dad, I'm going to be an international rugby referee."
Love that.
So it's not I'm thinking about doing it. And I was just like, mate, ignore the referee. I'm just really, really proud of what you've just said and how you've said it.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that, because you do that. All you want for your kids, I guess, is that you want them to find something that they're passionate about and go and follow that dream, and that's all we want. Want them to be happy and follow totally. Their dreams.
Just go and do it. Just go and do it.
And I love, it's really interesting you say about it, because I recently, a couple of weeks ago, we released the 50th episode, which was with Sally Gunnell, and obviously, Olympic champion, but talks similar to you about visualization and
right.
that piece around like. She visualised herself standing on that podium,
right.
And when I think it was 91 when she won it in 92, but 91 when she didn't have that confidence, hadn't visualised that, and she worked on the mental health side of it, worked on that mindset piece where, because in the world she was in front and she had that glance at the end and then someone overtook her,
right.
and she got a silver medal, and you're like, then she went away, and that's what she had to work on, her mindset, because that is what got her to the following year to go and win the Olympic gold then, because it was all about in your head, and it's such a powerful tool, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got no. Elite sport is just something that's completely alien to me. The level that some of these people are operating at. But yeah, we can all take learnings from just the clarity of thought. I kind of, it's like when I forget. We got to the beach near Wissant in France when we did the Channel swim, and we did it with a relay, and it was I got this picture of us getting onto the beach and how we would do it, and it was actually one of those comedy moments where I'm swimming, and the next thing I do is I touch the sand, but I touched the sand with my hand, and I realised that by that time I was only in about 18 inches of water, because so it's like, oh, okay, I can stand up now, and I stood up and it was at my knees. So,
wow.
But yeah, just those sorts. It wasn't quite how I was visualised the finish, to be honest with you. But what was magical was we just got onto the beach and shared a hug. I stuck a stone in my swimming trunks that I was going to take home and paint, do some painting on and stuff like that. But it didn't make it back to the support boat, so I don't know where that one got to. But yeah, everything that I'd visualised, it went a little bit wonky, to be honest with you.
But I guess that piece, talk to me a little bit about that moment. Getting onto the beach there, and the same getting into Antigua, like that. You visualised it in your head, all that training, like you mentioned to me, like 3 years or something, planning for and training for the row. But getting to that point, did you feel that sense of euphoria, that sense of achieving? You talk about it a lot with business, and you get to this point and you go, and same with the people I was talking about, Olympic champions. You get to that point and you go, is it? Are you in that moment? Do you appreciate it, and do you go, wow, I've achieved what I'd set?
I've got to be honest, and I'll probably say a lot of the time, no. I remember everyone said to me, they said, when you cross the finish line in an Ironman, you'll feel euphoric. And going back to the visual, you've visualised it. So there's never any doubt I'm not going to do it. So visualise. And we went off. So Rob and I, a good friend of mine, we went off to Germany to do the Ironman. And so the family weren't there. And it's painful. It's tough. And there's people way better than me, way faster than me. And actually, when I got to the finish line, everyone, it's like, yeah, how did you feel? And it's like, thank God that's over. So it was a lot. It sounds really horrible and crass, but it was like done it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. There wasn't. It was a box tick, and that sounds really, really bad. So when we had an amazing meal when we got back to Dover. Brian, who's a great mate, who is in the swim team, he's an Aussie. He bought some outrageously expensive bottle of wine. He's a bit of a wine buff, but to be honest with you, it tasted like Domestos, because I had like sort of mouth ulcers from the salt and everything else like that. It could have been anything, to be honest with you. So that was kind of wasted. But that moment was great. And with the row, I mean, it felt like, rowing into Antigua really slowly at the end. I mean, it felt like, I don't know. You mentioned Sally Gunner. I don't know what it feels like to win a medal at the Olympics or something like that. But we felt like that. That was pretty special. But then very quick
sense of achievement, isn't it? And I guess the key point, and I think Johnny Wilkinson spoke about it once as well on a podcast. He mentioned about all his life had all been geared up to scoring that winning goal in the World Cup.
Yeah,
and that sense of euphoria lasted about 30 seconds, and then that's why he went through loads of mental health issues afterwards, because everything had been geared to that one moment, that magical moment that he promised, this massive euphoria moment that would make him complete.
Yeah,
and it was.
And now you've done it, so you've in your head. I mean, I've found it before. It's like in your head, you think, well, I did what I said I was going to do, and then you don't give yourself the pat on the back for doing stuff like that. And I think the other thing is just life. I mean, we've spoken about it before offline. Everything's just so busy. We've got to get back to doing something else, and you've got to get back to being dad or get back to being a husband and all those sorts of things as well. It's just, but yeah, we don't spend enough time to celebrate those sorts of things, and we don't celebrate. I mean, one thing I've learned through business as well. I don't think we celebrate enough in business. We don't celebrate enough in what we do. So yeah, those sorts of things.
Because it's interesting, because you're right that in business, like sometimes just them small little wins, like actually taking them, because we're again being the type of mindset, type of people we are, where there's constantly something that we're striving for, whether that be in business, whether it's being a challenge that you've set yourself, but there's that constant striving for something, and then you look at it and go, not enjoying that journey on the way and making sure them little wins that you do get, you go, okay, that's taking that moment to sit and reflect and go, actually, look how far I've come, where I am right now. And
I've grown and sold a couple of tech businesses. We sold a business in 2012, and it was not a life's work, but it was a huge amount of my emotional energy. We grew a business from what was about 12 people to 42 people. We sold it to a company that was backed by private equity money, and I got, what was a life-changing amount of money. That was in the April, and then about June, July. I mean, it was a good year. It was 2012. So we had the Olympics. So I did treat myself with an extra couple of quid. I did treat myself to some extra expensive tickets at the Olympics. But other than that, and I bought myself a new pair of shoes because I'm quite thrifty, really, when it comes to it. But I found myself in coffee shops at 10, 11 o'clock during a week. Somebody's giving you a big chunk of cash. But you've lost your purpose, and that was I would say those probably about 3 months after selling the second business, I was probably on the edge of being pretty depressed, which I know that sounds completely alien, and it sounds a bit up myself, and I don't mean it to be, but it was the purpose and what you're there for and why you're doing it and all those sorts of things is absolutely critical.
Yeah, mate, it really doesn't. You say it sounds like that. It really doesn't, because I can't tell you the amount of people I've spoke to on here, people who possibly you know as well. Obviously, Chris Goodman, who's come on from Focus Group. I've had Kevin Byrne, who sold Checker Trade.
Amazing. A massive successes they are.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm sitting in this chair, to be honest with you.
But I completely, and we'll come on to that a little bit later, man, because I completely disagree with you on that, because everyone's level of success and what that looks like is different. It's not just that financial gain, whatever it is. You've sold a business that's made a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah.
So, and the same as they did, but both of them talked about it exactly the same way as you, in regards to like Kevin said about, it's the day he sold Checker Trade, he talked about the business so passionately, loved growing it and all that thing. The day he sold it was anticlimax, just had a life-changing amount of money, yet he wished he still had what he had. Yeah. And you talk about it in the same way, and I often talk about, I'm trying to almost unlock this, what the definition of success is, because it is someone's success in society, in business, is still, for me, is still based on someone's financial position. That's, you go, oh, he's really successful, like you've just alluded to there. Oh, Chris, I'm not in that, but like you listen to your story and the things you've achieved, and like mind-blowing success for someone. Like, I'm sitting here listening to you talk about it, and mind-blowing success, and other people stand out there and go, wow, look at it, that is successful. And the things you've achieved and that are maybe that have got purpose and have delivered 85 grand to 2 charities, which is unbelievable. Wow, what an amazing level of success in that sense, not based on your financial status, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
I think we're completely spoilt in the West. We've messed it up, really, to be honest with you, in our heads in terms of the definition of success. I think my dad, bless him, he worked for a while in Sri Lanka, and he was responsible for a power station coming online. And Sam and I, before we had children, we had a trip out to Sri Lanka, we were sat in a taxi or whatever we were, and we watched a load of kids standing in line waiting for a bus, and they were immaculately turned out in a white shirt. They were all waiting to go to school. They're all smiling, and then you realise they've just come out of almost a mud hut, and they're smiling, and they've got pristine white stuff, and it's like, whoa, it's really amazing. And I've taken and one of the things I've got, one thing I am passionate about is travel. And my daughter, I think she said she took great pleasure in saying that she'd been to 24 countries when she joined secondary school, which was amazing. And one of those countries is in India. I took the kids to India, and we got some exposed to some pretty unusual sights for Westerners. But it's an education piece, and I think our thinking is slightly wonky in that regard. And I think we've got this really, and I feel guilty about it for a long time. We've got this perception that everything your success and a great life comes down to money, and it's like, whoa, it can't. And I think the longer I'm getting and the older I'm getting, the more I realise that, you know what, being able to look yourself in the mirror and sort of smile and I do say as well, I've had some ups and downs. Had some challenges when I was younger, had some pretty deep thoughts about self-worth and those sorts of things, but I smile a lot. I know I smile a lot. I enjoy what I do. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, and I genuinely love my life, and I walk around with that in my head. Because I know full well that I'm just so much better off, and I don't mean that in a fiscal way. I'm so much better off and fortunate than a huge amount of people in the world, and to me that's I feel good about. I feel, why would I I've got nothing to moan about or feel grumpy about. I feel blessed, to be honest with you.
It's an amazing place to be. But you sort of alluded to it a little bit there, that obviously I guess you haven't always been at that peace with yourself in that sense. Like you said, you talk about self-worth and obviously the challenges and that, trying to prove stuff.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that mindset then around that, like that feeling of, you mentioned after, even though selling the business, maybe getting in a bit of a dark place or slightly depressed. Talk to me a little bit about those feelings around then.
Yeah, it's not easy to describe. I mean, you don't want to sound up yourself because you just, but there's lots of people. I think I read the book Jay Shetty, who's Think Like a Monk. We've got the same amount of time, and the other thing, and it's, if I go and speak I've spoke at a couple of events and schools and colleges and stuff in the run up to the row, and I taught one particular school I went to speak to at before the row, and I said to them, and it's not my stuff, I was looking at it from someone else. I said, we've all got two voices in our head, and we got the one that says you can and it encourages it and it lifts you, and we got the one that says you can't and you're not good enough. We've all got the same amount of time in a day. We've all got our own thoughts, and the difference is the one that wins is the one that we choose to listen to the most. And I was at this school, and I kind of said that, and as I was leaving, I went to sign out from the school, and this little lad came up to me, and he was slightly overweight, quite big glasses, and he said he grabbed my trousers, and he was trying to get my attention because he's small. He said, "Mr. Matt," and I said, "Yeah," and he stuck out his hand, and he said, "My name's Harry." And I said, "Nice to meet you, Harry." I shook his hand, and he said, "About what you said about listening to the bad voices and listening, I ought to listen more to the good voices." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going to do that. I'm going to be more confident." And the fact that he'd reached out his hand to a bloke who's come in, he didn't know, as a stranger after what I said. And I said, "Mate," I said, "I think you're already on the way. You're doing a cracking job. Well done, mate." And anyway, so I kind of finished signing out the book. I said, "Mate, just keep being you and think like that. It'd be amazing. And keep thinking like that." And anyway, I shut the door and I walked up the hill out of the school. And I don't know who got more out of that session than anything. Than it had a tear in my eye. Yeah. I'd make that particular, and it's just little things. And that particular day, hopefully Harry's gone away with something, and but I don't think Harry realised quite how much I took away from it as well, sort of thing. It was great, absolutely fantastic.
Because he's right, isn't it? And I guess, again, looking back, you look over the journey, you look at the achievements, and look at the things you've done, and I'm assuming, and it's got to be, that you listen to the good voice a lot more than you do the negative one that says you're not good enough to do that. And because if you didn't, or is it that bad voice is the one that does keep coming up, but that's what spurs you on? Because I'm not going to let that be.
I think it's a bit of everything. I mean, I read a lot. I never used to read much at all. I read a lot now, and I don't know the science of it all, but yeah, I think there's an element of it there that's I'm not going to succumb to the negative voices. Try and shut them down, and I think just a bit more inner belief as well, isn't it? And I mean, I think that's sadly a lot of people, and probably more so young people. Although there's a lot of people out, I think there's a lot of negativity out there, and I'd like to. We could all do with a pat on the back and an arm around the shoulder every now and then. Yeah. And I think just a little bit more encouragement, as opposed to there's too much negativity out there, isn't there? Really?
Yeah. No, I agree. And I want to talk a little bit, mention about obviously the tech business you sold. You fell into sales. You mentioned after the fishing thing, you sort of almost fell into the sales sort of role. Let's move on through that journey and nearly 3 decades within the sales environment. And obviously your business at the moment, Sales Enabla. Talk to me a little bit about things you've learned from sales and what was it about sales that excited you and you got in?
Well, I've got to be completely honest with you. I worked on a trawler, and then it was being the relief milkman, and then I stumbled into sales. It was life insurance, and it was the thing that I look back on and in that particular period of time, and I speak about it if I speak at a sales event now. It was selling life insurance. Early 80s or around the 80s, early 80s, early late, I can't remember, whenever, and with life insurance, but it came with it was either 8 or 10 weeks worth of training. Now, I speak at events now, and the whole world's got itself in a hurry, and I speak at events, and the whole idea of that 8 to 10 weeks worth of training is that you have an intake of 80 people or something, and then some people don't fancy it, and you go through that period of time. But at the end of that intake, there's 10 people that leave, okay, and they've got the cap, the badge, the briefcase, everything. Sounds a little bit, mechanical, but somebody's got the abacus out there and done the maths as to or works out what it is. But you come out and you know everything about the company, you know how to pitch it, you know how to present it, even know the language, the conversation threads that you need to go down and those sorts of things. And when I speak at events now, I think there are people that are in sales roles and they probably haven't had 8 to 10 weeks worth of onboarding or training in their careers, let alone before they start. So I'm passionate about onboarding better, because I think, and you've got me off on one now. One of the things I think we do is I think business owners and sales managers, I think we set salespeople up to fail more than we set them up to succeed. And I think we're pretty crap at onboarding them. And I've actually, the second book I wrote, which is Why Do So Many Sales Hires Fail, alludes to just that. I think it's really, really a sort of poor onboarding, and that's where I try and start if I work with a client, and that was actually the sort of the thought process behind Sales Enabla. It's like, well, why can't we within a business, we've got all this knowledge, why don't we document that? Why don't we document best practice? Why don't we document all these, but do it in a digital format, so that it's much, much easier to onboard people. What typically happens in sales, and we've both been around the block long enough, is Sam, great that you joined us, and you did a cracking second interview there. I'm ever so sorry, I forgot you were joining us. You're with us today. It was your first day. Anyway, your laptop's currently down with IT. They just they've got to fix a couple of bits and pieces for you. We're a little bit behind the curve on there. We did promise you a company car, but the previous guy we sacked last week brought it back with a load of dog hairs in it, so it's currently down being validated. Anyway, I've got you to sit down with John. John's our crappiest salesperson, but why don't you sit down with John and listen to a few phone calls, and if you feel comfortable, maybe pick up the phone and familiarise yourself with the CRM system, and maybe later on this afternoon make a couple of calls, and I'll nip back and see you before the end of the day. And that's
great start.
That happens up and down, and that kind of follows with a call, a conversation, maybe 3 or 4 months down the line, and it's Sam. You know what, mate? It's not really working, is it? And the whole cycle starts again. So the whole concept of Enabler is we digitise all of this. We digitise the best practice. We put it all down. It's easy to consume information. I mean, I'll give you a great example. I've got a client that I'm working with at the moment. I have this utopian view, and I call it D-30. So somebody's tip might have a notice period of 30 days. Well, when you offer them the job, send them the job offer letter, why don't you send them a log on to Sales Enabler? They can log in at their own comfort, in their own house, 30 days before they join that company, and consume all of that information that would typically take them 6 months worth of osmosis when they were with the company, and they can be ready to go. So talk about reducing the ramp up. I'm all about reducing the ramp up type and making people productive. And I've got a particular client, and in the next couple of weeks they've got a new starter, and that new starter is doing a pitch to me and the CEO on the first day within a company. Now, that's not to put pressure on them, and it's not going to be perfect, but they're going to have consumed all of that information, and they've already made a 3 or 4 month gain. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Because I'd be really interested to delve a bit more into the sales side, because I think that, like you said, when you're in business, whatever business that's in, you've got to have sales. If you don't have sales, you haven't got a business, whether that's a service that you're selling, whether it's a product, whatever there is, there's some element of... I think I used to run a hair salon, and I never cut hair. I was at the front of the house, but ultimately I was selling all day long, trying to get people to come in the door, whether I was at networking or whatever you do, you're selling yourself or whatever that looks like. There's some element of a sales process in there, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think the other thing, if you've got people, if it's a small business, typically the best people at selling are the entrepreneurs and the founders. Yeah. I spend a lot of time with founder-led businesses, and they're struggling to scale, and the reason for that is all in their heads. Yeah. So what we want to do is, or if you're slightly bigger and you've got a couple of people that are good salespeople and they make all the difference. I have this thing. It's like we want to model the masters. So whoever the masters are in that business, let's replicate what they do. I mean, you can't replicate the personality, but the kind of questions they ask, how they operate there, the case studies, the references they give about the validate, why you'd want to do business with us as opposed to someone else, and all of those sorts of things. It's like, this is all knowledge that resides within the company. So, and it doesn't, and the whole idea of Enabler is that we've templated so much of it so that all you do is there's 30 years worth of experience plus whatever I've accrued from other people. These are all the critical pieces of information that you need for a salesperson to succeed. All you need to do is personalise it, and that becomes your own sales academy, dare I say it.
Wow, I love that. Because people would often say to me, "Oh, you're a salesman, you could sell ice to the desk, all that sort of thing." And I've never seen myself as a salesman, if I'm being honest. Purely, for me, I'd be interested to get your take on it, but ultimately, people buy people. So sales is almost just building relationships. I don't know, what's your take on that?
I think people buy trust.
Yeah.
So and people buy from people and back their decisions up with logic. So I bought X from Sam because. So they have to justify it to someone else. That's the validation piece. But it's not about. It's not. I mean, in my early days, it was. I sold life insurance at the time. Maybe people would frown upon that because I was the guy that would cold call you at 6 o'clock in the evening, trying to sell your life insurance, and you've just come in from a busy day at work and you want to sit down with the family and have your tea. So I would probably, my target would be 200 calls in a day, cold calls in a day, and I would be told to go forth and multiply quite often, maybe 10, 15 times a day. I would be told to F off.
That's got to build so much resilience. Like people's, it's a massive skill, isn't it? Cold calling.
It's hard. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. I'm not going to lie. I was. I was in a situation with 14.25% interest rates on my flat, so I didn't have lots and lots of career options. So it didn't make any difference to me, and there wasn't any option. Yeah. So it was like just go to the toilet, look in a mirror, have a word with yourself, go and smash out another 20, 25, 50 calls.
Wow.
And then somebody maybe somebody goes, God, it must be your lucky day. And it's like when you get a yes, and it's like, well, probably, yeah. Law of averages says, it's going to come out at some stage. But yeah, I don't. My view is that sales is a lot more about systems and process, and it's not. And I'm working with another client at the moment, and I'm mentoring a couple of people that the thought, if you said that they were in sales, they would walk out the building. But they are exceptional at working with customers.
Yeah, love that. It's a good spin on it. But the people you work with now, and obviously the process and stuff you put in place, is there? Some people maybe will say that is there still a space for cold calling?
I think it's tough. I mean, people don't answer their phones anymore. People don't answer their mobiles. They leave it on a voicemail. We're in a, there's an age demographic where people don't talk. They only message. I think there is. I would prefer to do it warm calling, so that maybe there's a message or there's some automated marketing that goes on, but speaking to somebody and having a conversation. But you've got to be respectful of somebody's time as well. If you're gonna try and cold call or pitch to somebody, have something worth saying. And when I say have something worth saying, I mean prepare what you're going to say. Going back to the point you made sport-wise, you made the reference to Johnny Wilkinson. That guy, he trained 365 days a year. I was once, I was coaching I was asked to go and see a team, a sales team. There was about 15 people in there, and they weren't doing it particularly well. There's a little bit of old school negativity there, and we don't really need any training or mentoring because with all due respect, Matt, I've been doing this for quite a long time. I've been in this game for a while, and I asked the question. I said, "Well, how often do you practice your pitches?" And it's like, Matt, with all due respect, we've been doing this a while and all these sorts of things. So I said, well. So the answer's you don't. Yeah, pretty much, because we've been doing it a while. I said, okay, so what you're really telling me then is that you're practicing in front of prospects that the company spent quite a lot of money finding the leads for. And I said, and give that sporting analogy of we mentioned Johnny Wilkinson, rugby was my game, but equally, if you put it in football, Cristiano Ronaldo, I'm told he's the first on the training pitch and he's the last to leave. These guys train 300. So I said, look, so these guys, and the guy shot himself in the foot, the one that was the most vocal, and he said, well, you can't compare us to those kind of people. And I said, why can't I compare you to those kind of people? Well, they're professional at what they do. And it was a proper tumbleweed moment.
Yeah,
and
wow.
So you're practicing in front of live prospects. And I just don't get that. Don't get that. If you know what works, why don't you distill it? Why don't you record it, whether that's verbally, video, written, and why don't you share that as a best practice? Then everyone feels better about themselves when they win those sorts of deals. And we share good stuff as opposed to the old, dare I say it, when I stumbled into life insurance, and people have still got this draconian view that, oh, well, I had to get the scars and I had to earn my stripes, and so they're going to have to do it. They're going to have to go. And it's like, mate, if we've learnt some stuff, isn't it better that we share some stuff so that we all get better at the stuff that we need to learn? Those sorts of things, really.
I love that. And the more and more businesses that think like that would be, like you say, it would grow and be in a better place and do better things. Because, like you said, there's so much experience that you got to. I think, if anything, COVID proved in it that old systems and the way things used to be done can be changed. We was forced to change things, weren't we? Whether that be working from home, remote work, whatever that looks like.
I think it made a massive difference. Personally, I don't think we've seen the output of COVID yet. I think there's going to be a lot of people have changed their ways, practices. I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of again. It's not just young people, but probably impressionable people. I think there's a lot of stuff that we haven't seen in terms of how people think that probably is going to have some not so great outputs long term and those sorts of things. But yeah, we've had to do it. I mean, and it's crazy. So everyone went from, I ended up doing, the world fell apart, everything stopped. I ended up doing coaching and mentoring on teams, and it was relatively early on, and I still see it. I still see it. People with laptops, and I understand not everyone's got an office. I get that, but maybe think about maybe what's in the background, or think about how you present yourself. Put some light on your face. I'd quite often be coaching or mentoring salespeople, and about how they present themselves better. It's like, mate, you look like you're in a toilet. It looks dark, and you're really right up close to the screen, and I can see the hairs up your nose, and it's probably not what your prospect wants to see. Those sorts of things. And I don't mean that rudely, but it's just like let's have a little bit of almost Teams and Zoom etiquette, and get us what we've got to look good, because if you were going to see somebody face to face, you'd want to look good and make a good first impression. Often overlooked.
No, absolutely. But do you think, I'm interested actually with that, with then, like, I guess how you present yourself, or because do you feel there's again been a little bit of a shift in the sense of prior to lockdown, how many people still in a shirt and tie maybe, or how many, things have changed massively in that sense? Do you not think, is it because maybe people were seen at home in a much more relaxed environment, and is that not a better way to be, that we are actually, I can be my authentic self, I'm going to wear what I want, and I'm going through a midlife crisis, just keep wearing baseball caps all the time. Do you know what I mean? So you go, but I'm interested to see what that take on that is, because there is that balance, I guess, between being presentable or being your authentic self. I think
you get one. If we go back to the old, you get one chance to make a first impression. So if we work out what that needs, and I speak. If I speak to a client, I ask them. It's the first time I'm physically going to be with them. It's like, what's your dress code? I get an opportunity, so I can dress down, but I can't really dress up, having made a poor first impression. So to me, that's important. I mean, I think it's pretty acceptable these days if you're on a team or a Zoom call that you're in. You don't have to be a shirt and tie. You can be in a t-shirt and be relaxed. So I think that's all acceptable. I haven't. So we were at the Wolo ball on Saturday. I don't know if you must have noticed my son with his glitter ball suit, and so he had his glitter ball suit. I thought he looked fantastic. He thought he looked fantastic. I thought he looked, but he had a black shirt and a tie, and he said, "I want to wear the tie, Dad." And I must admit, it took me a couple of attempts to help him with his tie. That's how I just don't wear ties anymore. The last time I wear ties is at funerals and these days. But I think being authentic is good, but we still have standards. I think you need to work whatever that looks and feels like. I think standards, and I
think, like you said, actually the key point is you do only get a first opportunity to make that first impression. Don't you? You only get one chance to make that first impression, whatever that looks like. And
I say to the children, I say to children, if you can sit at a dinner table with somebody, with anybody. And you can hold yourself, and you can conduct yourself, and you can be conversational, and you kind of work out with your knife and fork from the outside in, and then I said you'll be all right in life, because there's a lot of people that don't place enough importance, and that's one thing. Sam and I, it's like, hold yourself, just hold yourself.
No, I love that. Okay, I just wanted to say something about one of our sponsors, Preston Insurance Brokers. Insurance is all about peace of mind, making sure that you're protected no matter what. There's no such thing as one size fits all, which is why Preston Insurance Brokers take the time to understand your business, how it works, and how all the pieces fit together. Because they understand your needs and whatever risks your business faces, they can offer you bespoke insurance cover to help your business grow with confidence. always safe in the knowledge that should the worst ever happen, they'll be here to help you weather the storm. Protecting businesses for over a decade, Preston Insurance Brokers will ensure that you're always in safe hands. Noah and the team have been looking after all my business insurance for many years and offer a truly fantastic personal service. To find out more, contact the team at www.prestoninsurancebrokers.co.uk. Your business, your insurance. Okay, back to the podcast. Look, you talking through there, you talked about like with the cold calling stuff and maybe the resilience, because that's a challenging period, I'm sure. And I want to talk about, I always talk about challenges and that we've faced in our life, and certainly running businesses. I think I read that like when you bought out that first business, you become manager, you remortgaged and to get that first business. And talk to me. Then that comes with pressure, but building brand businesses, selling them over the last 3 decades and stuff like. Talk to me about some of the challenges you faced in business.
I mentioned the first flat. So the first flat I bought, it was 14.25% interest rates. Fast forward about 10 years, and I was working. I was selling, still sales, but kind of small business over in Hailsham, and we had a great small business. And I suppose I was a little bit gobby, for want of another word. And I said, like, we're selling lots of hardware and maybe software and services is the future. And I got a response which was, if you think you're so bright, why don't you run the effing company? It's like, oh, okay. And we just bought my first flat was high interest rates. Roll forward, I bought the first house with my wife, and they were giving money away at silly amounts. Yeah. So we hadn't been there. So I kind of it sounds really, really bad, and I know you've had some people that buy and sell companies, but so it wasn't the best DD. I said, well, okay, but I'm not going to do it for nothing, and I want to be, I want major share if I'm going to do that. And that evening we arranged the previous MD. We just agreed a figure, which was twice what we'd mortgaged to buy the house, and I just never wanted to take a backward step. I just shook his hand, and then Sam said to me, she said, "Matt, you're late back tonight," and I said, "Yeah." She said, "What you been up to?" I said, "Well, I've just agreed to buy the major share of the company." She said, "How much for?" And I told her, and she said, "You fucking idiot! We haven't got that." And I said, "No, but I'll work it out." Anyway, and we haven't been there long. We remortgaged again. Should never say this, but it was just before money laundering forms came in, and I lied on the reapplication forms and got a little bit more money. Called a few other bits and pieces. Got some early inheritance. Asked for some early inheritance from my mum. Anyway, cut a long story short, got some money together. Bought the major share of the business. Paid all my loans off in 3 years. Never got so scientific about running what I was doing as then. Had one particular unpleasant experience. Inherited one particular member of staff, which anyone who's been in business, every now and then you get a wrong un. Ended up in a industrial tribunal. That was an amazing learning curve. Cost me quite a lot of money, but it was a great learning. Realised that I needed to, you need to be a little bit clearer in your communication. Just learnt a whole heap, really. I felt like I'd hit a bit of a glass ceiling when we got to a certain size, and upon reflection now, I probably would have done something differently. I'd have got coach, mentor, non-exec, something like that. I didn't. I felt like I was. Ended up sort of splitting the business, selling half and merging the rest with the businesses in Godalming. And as I say, we put a business together. We kind of had about 12 or 14 people when we merged two bits together, and we actually tripled it in sort of during the last recession, and we sold that in 2012 to a company that was backed by private equity money, and it's really quite strange because lots of learnings along the way. I never felt that anything I would ever do, somebody would pay me a proper amount of money. So it's like validation that you weren't an idiot and that you were on the right path. So but we grew that business quite well, and was a good deal. I was able to leave the business, and the businesses, and they've done really, really well with it, and I'm pleased for everyone. And the other thing I'm really, really, really pleased with, and I've got to say it because I'm having dinner with her in a couple of weeks' time. There was a young lady who worked with me, and she'll know who she is if she listens to this, because she is local. She worked with me at the first business. She worked with me at the second business, and she now works with the business that acquired us, and I'm amazingly proud of the fact that I've been able to help somebody really, really step on in their life, and she's a kingpin in that business now, and I'm really proud of her and seeing how she's developed, and also a couple of other people that work with me. They've just been and I suppose you just get a little bit, at the time you're just doing it because you're running the business and you want it to improve, but looking back, there's some people that have been with us on our journey, and I feel very proud, and even just to help them a little bit.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess like what's interesting, like listening to you talk about that again, that self-belief side of it, right at that start, like when you go, I'm gonna push everything. I'm chucking everything at it. Really, you're remortgaging up to the hilt, and you've got. But that self-belief that you go, I'm going to make this work.
Did you? There was the self-belief. There was the self-belief, but there was also the oh shit! If this doesn't, this has to work. There's no option here. This has to work, and that brings with it itself another load of challenges. You just immerse yourself in it. You don't look up, and you're driven. Of course, you're driven, but you're driven through making a work of it. But you're driven because you know that if this doesn't work, it's a bit like.
It's that fear of like what stops a lot of people is that fear of failure is more than that. I know I can do this, and I believe I'm going to do it.
The fear of failure, and so that, and also when it came to things like the row, and all other things, and also I played rugby for quite a long time. When you're in, it's like, are you in? Are you all in? No, I'm absolutely all in. This is what I want to do, and it was with that business, I'm all in. I'm absolutely all in. And then with the row, it's like there's no other option. You are all in. You've got no choice. We're 1,500 miles from land and safety. You're all in.
Yeah, wow. Well, look, let's go on to that. Let's talk about the road. And I'm just fascinated by I was even listening to you talk before we come on, saying about the 3 years training leading up to it. Like, talk to me about your mindset, like the initial thought process. I'm gonna row the Atlantic Ocean. Where does that initial thing start from, and that whole, just talk to me about your mindset through the process, and then actually the row as well, and what gets you through that.
We were. I was at the rugby club. So Neil, one of my fellow rowers, we were at a sponsors' lunch, a few beers, and we were just talking about challenges in general, and everyone had known I'd done a few challenges, and the conversation of what next came up. And Sam leant forward and said to Neil's wife, Madeline, she said, "You'll never guess what he wants to do now. He wants to row an ocean." To which Madeline's response, "Oh, that's really quite interesting. I think you'd quite like that, wouldn't you, Neil?" Not thinking for one moment that he'd lock onto it. And Neil's, "Yeah, I quite fancy that." He didn't do his, and then we just roll forward, and there was about 3 or 4 texts on my phone the following morning, and we'd all gone and got drunk and stuff like that. And he goes, we picked up the phone. It's like, "I fancy this," and it's like, "Oh, right, okay." And it kind of morphed and got forward. We did actually plan to do it as a 4, and for one reason or another, it didn't work out, and we went back down to a 3. But it ended up being the start of That ended up being the start of a 3-year journey, and 3 years. The training is one thing, but it's actually pulling a campaign together to, you've got to buy a boat, you've got to do the mandatory courses, there's a week's worth of mandatory courses, and the race organisers, Atlantic Campaigns, it's just amazing, and then you just a 3-year journey, and it's hard work, and it was selfish. You've got to be selfish to do stuff like that, and
how much training do you do for something like that? Like
I would do a couple of hours a day on a rowing machine or something like that, and weights. And then once we got the boat, we clocked up about 250, 260 hours at sea on the boat as well, just getting to know how the boat operates. But even then, the minimum was 120 hours. We said, well, we don't want to do that. We want to smash it. So we did 250, 260 hours of training on the boat out of New Haven, so up and down the south coast. But even that, nothing prepared you for the Atlantic. Oh my word, nothing prepared you for the Atlantic.
Yeah, wow. Because what is this like? What is it, 49 days? Is that how long?
Yeah, we were 49 days. I think the winning team was about 31, and as we speak here now, we're about 90 days on from the start. There's still 3 teams out there.
Really?
Yeah, it's and they the last so, and we've been on land for 6 weeks, so teammate Willie said that he summed it up really, really well. He said it's simply brutal, and it's brutally simple in the fact that you just got to row from La Gomera across the Atlantic Ocean. There's nothing in the way. You hardly see anything. You've just got to keep going, and it's brutally simple, but simply brutal along the way, because you've got to, on daytime we rowed 2 rowers for 1 hour on, half an hour off, and at night time we dropped down to 1 rower and we rowed for 1 hour on and 2 hours off. So the longest sleep, if you can call it sleep, was kind of just under 2 hours
for the whole.
Pretty much, yeah. A couple of times we got some bad weather. You try and sleep more, but you just can't because you're just getting smashed. So yeah, the longest sort of sleep in inverted commas was kind of just under 2 hours, and you'd lean in the cabin, you'd shut your eyes, and then before you know it, you're up again. So yeah, you hallucinate, and all the things that I know through reading some sleep books are just not good for you. It's brutal, and it's just the relentlessness of it all. And the other thing that's not pleasant is you feel filthy. I mean, we got in the water 4 or 5 times to clean the boat, and that was such a nice feeling, because it's hot, 30 degrees or whatever. So you're rowing in the sun. It's hot, so you sweat a little bit. You've got factor 50 cream on, so you know what everyone feels like with sun cream, and then everything is sticky with the salt, so you just feel filthy, and it's just it's
no
pretty unpleasant. There's nothing. There's no let up. There is no let up. So you can't, you might go into the cabin when you were going to have your 2 hours, and you just have a little cry, and and I describe it's the highest highs and the lowest lows. It just beats you. It beats you and beats you and beats you, and you've just got to get back up again, sort of thing. And to a certain extent, in the kind of, there's a perverse way of thinking about it. It's and I kind of like that. Yeah. It's like, oh, come on. And
it's just pushing yourself, isn't it? Constantly pushing those limits of what you can achieve.
But I remember doing the Ironman. I remember the last 2 or 3 miles of the Ironman, and I was having a word with myself, and I was moaning and whining and stretching, leaning against a barrier, and why me, all my head in my hands and stuff like that. And this guy went past me with 2 prosthetic legs.
Wow.
And you go, Garman, man up, get on with it.
Yeah.
Just get on with it. Stop whining and get on with it. And it's the similar sort of thing. It's like there are people, there's people, we've been raising money for the charities. There's people in those charities who are having a tough time of it. And when it's like that, I've found, for me personally, I bring myself back, level yourself. Hang on a minute, level yourself. You're in a quite a privileged position here. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it's wet. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. All these sorts of things. But there's someone worse off than you. All right. So don't forget that, and don't forget we're trying to raise a large amount of money so that other people can have a little bit more comfort at certain times of their life as well. And it's just stop thinking about yourself. Start thinking about other people.
Yeah, that's tough. And like, I guess with the other, so I heard you talk on Saturday, and you just sort of saying actually the three of you's all got on. We like to spend that amount of time with someone in that such close proximity, and having to, I guess, the reliance on each other as well. To when maybe someone's feeling a bit shit, you want someone to pick you up.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we got on amazingly well.
Yeah.
I mean, it was non-stop banter, but we did have a little bit of a, raised voices 3 or 4 times in the overall scheme was nothing. Yeah. We all kissed and made up, and it was good. And
what brought that on? I'd be interested. Like, what, the raised voices for what someone for what reason?
Oh, I mean, you've got at times in the bad weather, you've got waves that are sort of, and this is not an exaggeration. You've got waves that are 40 or 50 foot, and there's 3 blokes in a boat, and the boat is 27 feet. To put that in context, you're gonna, we need to, and sometimes, for whatever reason, the boat's veered round, so you might be beam on to something that could tip you over. So it's like, we gotta do stuff, and sometimes, we can have a conversation like we're having like this, and sometimes you need to up the ante in terms of the language, and it's a bit like that. But there's nothing, never ever. It was incredible. Never anything other than that. I mean, I remember one particular day on the deck with Wooly, we're rowing along, and most of the wind and the waves for that particular day had come from the stern or the quarter, and we just saw this wave quite a way off. On the beam, and it was probably started a couple of 100 yards out, and it got closer and closer, and it got bigger. And I looked at Wooly and I said, that's quite a big one, mate. And he went, yeah. And it just got bigger. It grew up on us, and then it started foaming. And it's like, and we're looking up. If you can imagine looking up, maybe say 45 degrees across from where you are at the moment, and see this big tumbling wall of water. And I thought we were going to capsize. I just hold on, and I think what happened is it partly went through the boat, straight over us, and I think partly it pushed us to one side, and we just, and sort of 30 seconds later, we're still upright, and we just looked at each other and laughed. We just laughed at it, and it's like, I think I need to go and change my pants. Because it was, and then it's hey, we're upright, we didn't roll over, keep going, let's go again, and just let's keep rowing. And
mate, I tell you what, I'd be keen to. You said about them times where, especially at night, maybe you ran on your own. And it's just you and the other two. Is there like you said, being alone with your thoughts, I don't know, you're 30 days in or something, and you've got another, you're almost halfway, and you've got 20 odd days still to go.
Yeah.
Like, what goes through your head at those points? Is there that feeling? We just got to keep going. There's no other option.
There's no option. There is no option.
Because you're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, like, what do you?
Stop whining. Just stop whining. Stop moaning. Get on. Keep going. And I think, and you do get the sleep monkeys, because obviously you are sleep deprived. So you can't think properly. You can't think straight. So if somebody said to you, Matt, 100 times 4 multiplied 50, minus 50. You go, well, it's 350, isn't it? You can't. Your brain doesn't work like that. It kind of just anything that's like a little bit complicated, it just turns to mush. You can forget about it. So, things like that. The other thing is so I've got my wife and I've got 2 children, and I had early on. I had when I signed up. I don't know what side it is. I had a tattoo done on my shoulder. So I've got 3 stars in a line to represent Sam, Joseph, and Molly. So they're and it's put there. So they're my 3, and I had that when I signed up for the row. So they're my 3 stars looking over my shoulder. And then the other. So when you say about the middle of the night, so at night, and I didn't really know because I hadn't studied the stars, but there's Orion's belt And what you got to realise is when you're on the Atlantic, on a clear night, the stars and the sky are magical, absolutely magical. And Orion's belt is a formation, and it's, I don't know the history of it all, but there are 3 stars in a line, and it's Orion's belt. The 3 stars are, and I would quite unashamedly sitting here talk. I would talk to Sam and the children. How's your day? How you getting on? I miss you, and I love you, and I can't wait. I would just talk to them.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'd talk to them every night. Talk to them every night.
Love that. That's choked me up a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, but I just can't. It's so for listening to you talk, like just. It's so difficult for anyone to just put their mindset there of what that would be like you say, cold.
I know you're not cold. You're hot. You're warm.
Hot, of course. Whatever that was feeling, but just being there at night and just thinking, like, just alone with your thoughts and being in here for 30 days or whatever period that is, and still thinking, oh God, and we're gonna go on.
We had some. I mean, I would at night. And again, you just talk to yourself. I'm not listening. Going back to what you said earlier on, I'm not listening. I don't let the negative thoughts. So I think about the positive thoughts, and I'd talk to Sam, and I most of the time I'd say, "Sorry for leaving at home with the kids. Hope it's not too bad." I'd say to Joseph and Molly, I'd just say, hope you have a good day, and say how proud I am of you, how much I love you. Those sorts of things. I'd have those conversations. But then it does get you. It beats you down. It beats you down. And there's one time, and I said earlier on about it's the highest highs, the lowest lows. So there was a realise that we were about a week and a half away from Antigua, and we'd had a pretty shitty day, and we kept getting stuck in this sargassum wind and it's weed, and it just stops you. You row into these huge carpets of weed, go again, weed, go again, all this sort of stuff, and had a bad day. It was a Friday, and you don't want to admit it, but we were trying to do 60, 70 miles a day, but and 2 or 3 days we'd done 30, 35, and you don't want to admit it, but I got whacked around the face. The realisation that we weren't going to make it when I'd hoped, and when we'd planned to get back, see the Sam and the children, and we'd already moved it back once, and I rang Sam on the sat phone. It was afternoon at sea. It was kind of early evening then on a Friday, and they were out at a restaurant. And I was crying. I was low, and I just remember saying, I'm just so sorry. I'm sorry. I messed everything up. I've messed you around. I'm really sorry. You're gonna have to bump the flights back again. And she was she was calm with it all. Don't worry, I thought that was going to be the case. And I was, I'm sorry, and I'm crying. And she said to me, do you want to talk to the children? And I said, I can't, and I'm crying, and I just hung up. I just couldn't. I just said I can't, and I just hung up on the satellite phone. I was just in a pretty low place that night. Because we all felt the same. We all felt the same. Just rubbish. It's not going where we want to be. And then the following morning, sun came up, and we're visited by a pod of about 30 or 40 dolphins.
Wow.
And you kind of, and I've got more spiritual in life as well. And you kind of go, was that meant to happen? And it's really, it was emotionally. It's a proper emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, I could be, mate. Thanks for sharing in that way as well, because I guess because people watch it and they see, and at the event on Saturday, you're standing up and presenting £42,500, and you see the videos online of you coming into Antigua with all the flares and everything, the excitement and stuff like that. It's those bits that you share there that's what people don't see. That side of it that you go, you know what, they're getting probably so sleep deprived, there's not, lack of energy, all them things that all play on your mind. You know, lonely, although you've got the other two there, there's times, like you said, you're doing it on your own, you just must, physically, mentally, just beaten down and drained, and yet trying to find that little moment where you can pick yourself up and go, just got to go again.
Yeah.
And got to drive on again.
It is, and it's a, I suppose it's a little bit of a metaphor for life, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
You're going to get beaten down, just get back on a horse.
This is the magical thing. I wonder whether how much of your business journey prepares you for something like that. Like you said, right back from the 200 sales calls where you get in, like, not quite to the state of being in Atlantic Ocean, but you know what I mean? That type of mindset, like, I'll just keep going. Like, no matter how many times you get knocked down or whatever point you feel like. And the same through your business journey, sometimes your ups and downs of running a business and all the things that, like you said, the tribunal and those bits that go beat you down, and you still pick yourself back up and you dust yourself off and you go again. And all of that, like you said, all of those things, those learnings, how much of that mindset of running businesses and your life journey, getting to that point of going, that helped you through those 49 days.
Yeah, I think just you can have a bad day, but what's the option? What is the option? What do you want to do? Do you want to, and look, I mentioned, I've always thought I'm only here once, and what's the worst thing that can happen? I could die, yeah. It's going to happen to all of us one day anyway, and I don't mean that negative. I don't mean that flippant. I don't mean that. I don't mean that flippantly, but it's better to have tried and failed than never tried at all, isn't it? You just can't. I can't comprehend why. People say, "Are you nuts?" When we signed up for the row, or some of the other challenges, it's like, no, I don't think I am nuts. And you know what? The more it goes on, the deeper I feel, the stronger I feel about. I think you're nuts for not actually wanting to have a go. Not necessarily it's something as broad as Row the Ocean, but it might be a 5K, or it might be couched to 5K, or what. I think you're nuts. If you don't want to stand up and say I did this or I did that, or at least give yourself a pat on the back, I think you're nuts for not having a go, to be honest with you. You're only here once. As the world, we're only here once.
Yeah. I just love that so much. Like, for me, because like you said, so many people will go through life and live in this little comfort zone of not coming out of that and just getting up and doing the same thing every day and not experiencing. Like, I've failed so many times at so many things, and yet I go, I'd much rather be, like, when I get on that deathbed, at least I'm going to look back and go, you know what, I've never, whatever that definition of success is going to be, maybe I've never achieved that definition of success, if that is whatever that definition says. But you know what, I hope that I will look back and go, I'll give things a go. I'll give it a go.
Well, the thing is, there's a salesperson I mentor, or sales manager I'm mentoring before I went away on the road, and I said, "Have you tried this?" And they go, "Yeah, I tried that, didn't work." And other things, I've done this and it's not gone too well. And then we start talking about other things outside of work. That didn't work. Maybe I'm not right for this. Maybe I'm not very good at that, and all these sorts of things. And I said, well, when was that? And it's like, well, that was 3 years ago. That was 2 years ago. That was 6 months ago. Whatever it is. And we've all had these. I go on the basis that I've probably had slightly more successes than failures, but it's pretty narrow. There's quite a lot of. But then I say, it's like, well, you're not the person you were 3 years ago. You're not that person. You're a different person because you've gone through those experiences, because you felt that way, because you felt the frustration or the disappointment or whatever. You're a different person now than you were. So, and just going back to the other thing about, maybe when we're old and all this sort of stuff. One of the books I listened to on audiobook when I was on the road is written by an Australian palliative care nurse. Her name's Bronnie Ware, and the book's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And I wish I did this, and I wish I did that, and I wish I did. And it's like, well, don't.
Yeah.
Just.
I've heard it. I've not actually read the book, but I spoke about that. Someone else had mentioned that book to me, and they said like one of the number one rule of that was like not live the life true to myself.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I wish I had the courage to live the life true to myself and not the one that was expected of me. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, something like that.
Yeah, and that's amazing. Like, if that is the biggest regret of the dying, like, what are we doing? Like, just to go out and go, actually, I'm in this job that, like, people listening to this now, they're maybe in a job that they don't want to be in. They're doing things that they don't want to do. Just to go, actually, take something from there and go, this is what I want to do.
Well, the other thing is you get older. I'm 53. You start thinking about the next chapter, next season, all these sorts of things, and I meet people, and it's like, well, when I do this, and when I retire, I'm gonna do this, and it's like, really? You're gonna be 65 years old before you go and do that? It's like, why don't you do it now? While you've got the energy, the strength, and all those sorts of things, you might not have the same ability to do things when you're 65. So crack on, do it.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, look, I want to. I read talking about that. It's fascinating listening to that period of going across the ocean. I want to talk because I read a recent post that you wrote. Since rowing experience, you put modern life is way too fast and complicated. On the boat, we just rowed, ate, and rested. So I'm already seeking out ways I can make my life less complicated. I'm really interested to talk about it because I've recently read a book, Can't Hurt Me, by David Goggins. And we sort of mentioned before offline, Navy SEAL Ranger, ultra athlete, describes in life like we're constantly pushing and constantly trying to achieve and with our strong mindset there's no limits to what we can do and stuff like that. But I'm conscious what did you really mean by that in that sense, and what are your thoughts on that constant pursuit of achievement and where you are now, like wanting to maybe, do you want to slow down? I think
there's multiple strands on that, to be honest with you. So I think
that's maybe another podcast.
No, there's multiple strands on it. It was really simple life. It was really simple life. We've got these mobile phones that I think they're just poisonous devices. I mean, they're a kind of they're a necessary evil. I think they're poisonous devices, particularly for young or impressionable people. Constantly bombarded with stuff. We lived a really simple life on the boat, and when I say looking about stuff, there's some things that I own that I've decided that I'm gonna either give away or put on eBay with my lad or whatever. Yesterday I had a lovely cathartic trip to the tip to take a load of stuff that I don't need or want, clutter as much as anything else. And you know that feeling when you drive home from the tip and the car's empty. And it's just that simple stuff like that. And then and also I took loads of never been a fancy dresser, but lots and lots of clothes and some stuff. I took them to the charity shops, and it was like, oh, should I give that to them? No, let's give that to them because they can make a tenner out of that or a fiver out of that. So just took a load. I just say declutter, declutter my life. Try and simplify a few things. And also, I also put on that same post is hang out with some people. Hang out with the people I want to hang out with as well. It's busy, we don't, and sometimes you speak to somebody. It's like, oh, you really want to get together for dinner? Oh, I've looked at the diaries. We can't make it work until June, and it's like, are you for real? We've got to be able to. That doesn't work. It doesn't sit with me. I've got to, I need to see you now. Or I need to see you next week or something, And we all look at our diary. I've got a slot then. It's like, sod the slot. I'll come up and see you at 6 o'clock in the morning. We go for a walk, or we'll go for breakfast, or we'll do something. And I just simplify stuff and hang out more, and just declutter. I love a good trip to the tip, should I say? Yeah.
Mate, yes, you're so right. Like especially running a business, it's like you without your phone, it's like losing an arm. Like I can't not have that. Yeah. That thing there that we're constantly. I remember talking about.
But there's different things. Sorry to cut. Yeah. There's two different things, and there's urgent and there's important. Yeah. These things make us think that everything's urgent. Yeah. But if we sit back and look at it, once we've responded to everyone as quickly as possible, and then we've done everything we needed to do, and then hang on a minute, I promised I'd do such and such for my son or my daughter or my wife, or I promised I did such and such for a member of staff, and I got ambushed, and I didn't get to that because all this crap is coming at me, side by side. All this stuff's coming at me on my mobile phone, and again, it's simplicity. Is it urgent or is it important? Yeah. If it's important and it needs, then that. And what sometimes also you need to think again as well. What's important to you or important to me might not. What's important to me might not as be. It might be small to me, but it's big to you. Yeah. So I need to recognise that. When I say is it important, it's important to you. Okay, if it's important to you, then I need to respect that, as opposed to just just looking at it's like I challenge anyone to look at one video on YouTube. You just can't. We're going to have a look at that. Oh, that looks really dumb. Yeah. And the next thing you're looking at
down a rabbit hole.
People down. Yeah, it's just so. These things are they've got a purpose, but I think they're really poisonous devices.
You know what? So for me, I'm definitely coming. One of the biggest learnings, I'm really trying to take out of doing a podcast and other podcasts I listen to and my own torture is the beginning of this year. I'm just trying to be. My goal for this year is just trying to be as present as I possibly can in the moment. Started meditating, which I'd never done before. Really struggle with it, to be honest. I just can't switch off that brain, just 100 mile an hour, and I'm trying to but it's a practice, so I'm constantly learning on that. But I just think listening to you talk, and I guess going back to the point on the boat, how simple life is. You haven't got that. You're just there in that moment, and what else can you do? I'm here. I've got my two pals who are having a kip. I'm rowing on my own, and I've just got to be in this moment right now because all I've got to concentrate on that thing. And it must have been, for all the tough times, still like that clarity. That must have been an amazing space to be in.
It is at times. I mean, there's highs and lows, there's ups and downs, and but there is space to think, and that's what we don't allow ourselves to do. We don't have space to think. I mean, one of the things that my wife and I do, we've done it. Obviously COVID kind of interrupted it, but one of the things that we do every year is we each have a week off. So Sam will go away for a week somewhere. Just typically we might go to the she's got family in the States. Might have a week off, and she's talking about at the moment having a week somewhere later on in the year, and I might have a week I'd go on a mine would be less sedate, and mine wouldn't be sitting on a beach. I'd be, I'd want to try and climb a mountain or go and do something like that. But you have a week, and that's something that I think just having a little bit of your own time is a good thing, or even just kind of try something different. I say to the children. In the past, you put a bit of food in front of them, and all kids are kids might be a bit fussy. It's, I don't like that. It's like, well, you don't know that because you haven't tried it. Yeah, so I'm a great believer, and I say to them, I've always said, if you feel, taste, touch, smell as many things as you can in life, then you can decide if you like it or not.
Yeah, I love that. I'm exactly this. I say exactly the same to my cook. For me, I'm a massive cook. I love my food, so I love cooking. So on the recipes I was brought up on, I cook for them, and I can put stuff in front of them, and they go, "Oh, I'm not eating that. Why? I don't like it. You haven't tried it.
Yeah.
Tell me, eat it, and then tell me you don't like it. No problem.
Totally.
And I'm not a bad cook, so half the time they don't mind it, so it's okay. The odd bit, Dad, I'm not a fan, but it's.
That's fine. If you tried it, you don't like it. I get it. I get it.
I'm exactly the same. There was one thing I wanted to touch on about, and you sort of mentioned it a little bit before offline, and listening to your conversations with Sam while you was there, it sort of saying about. It felt like you'd been really selfish doing this. You know, you've done an amazing thing and changed so many people's lives with the amount of money you've raised and what you've done, but you said that you felt a bit selfish because of the time that you had maybe dedicated towards the training and then going away for sort of 7 weeks and stuff like that. Just tell me a little bit about that sort of mindset. Like that.
I think if you chuck yourself into stuff like that, you if you want to do that, you do end up pushing yourself. You've got to push yourself quite hard. There are, dare I say, sacrifices, and or there's or you have to be quite selfish. I need to do that. I need to do that, and that obviously has an impact. There's a positive and a negative and all that sort of stuff. I didn't realise, and I said it when I was interviewed when we got off the boat. I didn't realise quite how much it had taken out, and then maybe I was just walking around like a trance and too selfish and to think about it. But I didn't realise quite how much it had taken out of Sam and the children until middle of last year, and obviously by that time it's too late to change anything. Not that I probably would have changed it, if I've got to be honest with you. But I think I didn't realise quite how much it took out of them, but also quite how much I took from them, and how amazing, they are for letting me do stuff like that and actually support me as well. When there's quite a few times they had no right to be that supportive and helpful, to be honest with you.
And I guess there is the flip side to that. And amazing, like you said, you couldn't really do it without their support.
No, absolutely not.
So you're looking at, but actually, how inspiring that is especially for your kids and stuff like that, to see the amount of skills that must give them, seeing their dad going, I'm going to put my mind to that, and I'm going to go and do something that a very small percentage of people on the planet have ever done.
Yeah.
And like you said, and you hear your son stand up then at school and say that what he did.
Yeah.
There's elements of what you've done.
I'd like to think so. I mean, but you've also got to be mindful that they're their own individuals and they're their own people. And so I think what do we want for our children? We want our children to be happy. We want our children to feel that they're living a fulfilled life. I don't know whether but what you don't want them to do. And the flip side of that is I don't want them to sit there and think, well, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and got to do the other. And I think there's pressures there. But just if you're gonna, one thing I do, just show up. Don't. When I say just show up, I mean just give the best version of you. And I list there's an amazing video of a guy, a speaker thing I've seen on YouTube, a kind of inspirational talk, magnificent talk, and I can't. There's this fella, he's like a graduation ceremony and stuff like that, and he got the advice from his dad, and his dad said to him, he said, I've got no problems with you if you aim high and miss, but I've got a real issue if you aim low and hit. And that's, so it's like, well, just if you give your best and look yourself, you've got to look yourself in the mirror and be honest with me. Did you give your best? And if you gave your best, then hey, I'll give you a pat on the back every day.
Love that. Look, we've sort of we've skirted around and we've talked about, amazing.
Sorry, it's been a bit
no, oh, mate, it's fascinating, honestly. I can't, we've talked so many different achievements that you've had throughout the life. What I'm keen, and like I said, almost unlocking that narrative around success and what that looks like to people. One of the major things that I talk about on here. So I want to look at, like, obviously where you've been, where you are now, where you're going. How do you define success?
I think success means different things for different people. From someone that hasn't always felt, dare I say it, I choose my words. I felt probably a bit misunderstood. Probably felt different, and also the flip side of that, being angry at times. I think success is very, very different. It just means so many things for different people. I think being happy, being comfortable in your own skin, I think is, and I've not always felt comfortable in my own skin. And it sounds a bit cheesy, being a good person, just being a good human. You don't have there's just so many judgments. You can, in the West, we said earlier on in the interview, people judge success in the Western world by how much money you got in your bank account, and it's like, really, is that what it's come to? I put on my when I put my Facebook account together, somebody, what are you going to put on there? And I said, well, I don't know, loves life and smiles a lot. Don't know. So it's, I just think it means so many different things. But I'd like try and give you. You're only here once. Every one of us is unique. Every one of us should be authentic, and every one of us should live the life that they want to live. And regardless of what that, that's for them. It doesn't matter whether that's, if that's business, that's personal, that's, whatever. What is success for each other is it's just different. It's just different. And to me, I just want to be the best version of me.
Brilliant answer, mate. I love that. Because the problem, again, back to phones, back to social media, back to what all that looks like, that external validation that we crave from other people. Actually, if you are, surely the element of success, if you're happy with who you are, you show up, you're giving your best, and I'm talking about life in general. I show up, I give my best at whatever I'm doing every day, and I'm happy with who I am as a person, and I'm a good person.
I said to them, it's like, I don't know, I can't remember if it was before or during this, but there was a time on the boat when I was rowing on my own. You mentioned about dark times and stuff like that. And the one thing about Carsten, the race director, he asked me a question. He asked me after we'd been on land for a couple of days. He said, "Go on, mate." He said, "Give me 3 words about the row." And I said, the first one was brutal, the second one was relentless, but the third one was fulfilling. In the fact that we all carry around stuff, whether we choose to admit it or not. I could never be a poker player because I'd just say how I feel. But we all carry stuff around, and I feel that, and I felt the reason I said fulfilling is that I had some stuff that had been going on in my head for a long, long time, and been angry and stuff like that. But I genuinely felt I'd put it in a box during the period of the row. I'd put it in a box, and do you know what, Sam? Not only did I put it in a box, I'd put the lid down. And do you know the really, really cool thing about the box? Is I'd nailed the fucking lid on it. I'd nailed the lid down. Sorry, I shouldn't swear like that. No, I'd nailed the lid down. And that to me was fulfilling. And I said the other thing is as I was going across, we all eat away at this, that, and the other. And I just to those doubts that I'd had in my own head and my heart about that whole negative thinking and that whole inferiority complex and imposter syndrome and all that sort of thing. I said to myself, well, if that ain't effing good enough, then I don't care. I really don't care anymore, and I mean that most sincerely.
Mate, what a brilliant, I guess, if anything, all the amazing things that's come out of that row, one of the brilliant things, listening to you talk like that, surely as an individual, that's got to be what actually most of us are striving for, because you're right, and many of us carry around so much shit with us, and you're actually getting to a point where you go, I guess, a little bit at peace with yourself, that I can put them things in a box and I can put them away, and I'm happy, I'm dealt with that. And you can actually, hand on heart, go, I've dealt with that, and you're at peace with yourself. And because, again, back to that definition of success, happiness, whatever that, contentment, fulfillment's got to be what ultimately we're all trying to get to, isn't it? Just living a fulfilled life that you just go, I'm at peace with where I am. Done.
There's I was chatting to somebody once before, and they said we were talking about relax. How do you feel if you feel comfortable with yourself? And I'm still working on that. I'm still a work in progress. But a lot of people, probably lots and lots of adults, have seen the film Shawshank Redemption. Yeah. And there's a bit in the early bit of it when Andy Dufresne. He turns up at Shawshank, and I think was it Morgan Freeman's doing that. Morgan Freeman's doing it, and he goes to something like, it's fair to say I liked Andy to start, and the fact he just walked around the I call it the playground, whatever you call it, the yard. Walked around the yard, and he said he just didn't have a care in the world, and he was obviously completely comfortable with his skin. And somebody said to me before, how do you feel about that? I said, I want to be like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption. That's how I completely.
I love that. That's a great analogy. I love that. Look, mate, we're coming towards the end. So before we finish up with our quick fire questions, a couple of last little bits I want to ask. So this one, I want to, if you could go back in time to one specific moment in your life, what would it be and why?
I think it would be the day that I stood on the deck of the trawler that I worked on, and we went out to one of the other that I mentioned earlier on. One of the guys died on the boat, on the boat that they worked on, and there's a burial at sea, and it was out of I know exactly where it is. It's there's a piece in an area they call the graveyard, and it's 8.1 miles due south of New Haven Harbour, and this area that they've got there,
8.1 miles.
8.1 miles immediately due south of New Haven Harbour. I've actually opened a couple of talks with it, and the guy had requested a burial at sea, and I just remember looking over the side, and this coffin, and I kind of thought that it was going to go over the side and just sort of go like that, swing side to side down, and it just went over the side and went whoosh, straight down to the bottom. And it was the kind of the fact that he wasn't an old man, he was probably he had 2 young children, 40 or so, something like that. And life's precious. And I mean, I'm shooting a hit. I'm sure there are other memories, but that one, it's stuck in my head, if that makes sense, and that's probably why I mention it.
Yeah, well, fair, mate. Well, look, before we go to quick fire questions, what does the future hold for Matt Garman?
I'd like to say continue, but continuing, trying to be a good husband, trying to be a good father, trying to be a good role model, and I say that deliberately before any work or professional stuff. I would say I want to do more speaking, and that's not an ego thing. I've still got to earn a bit of a living, but I also, as part of that speaking, I'd actually like to do some more speaking to groups of young people. I don't just mean schools, maybe people that are not quite feeling the self-worth that perhaps they could do. I'd like to do a little bit more of that. I don't know what that looks and feels like yet. And I've still got some businessy type things I'd like to do as well. I'd like to, I come back. I've booked 3 trips away with my wife. Looking forward to that. Booked a summer holiday. I'd probably still travelling, working hard. But I'd come back. Yeah, probably trying to be a good husband, a good father, role model, and stuff like that. I think.
I want to ask you, if I had asked you that question, look, I guess we always want to be that. If I'd asked you that maybe 5 or 10 years ago, would that have been your first answer again?
No,
then?
Absolutely no, absolutely not. I do feel more. I feel more mature, a lot more mature in my thinking. I feel I'm a lot more aware of. Probably because of the row, I'm a lot more aware and mindful of people around me. And when I say people around me, I mean people I care about, and also people that have just been introduced to my life. I want to give the best version of me, and I want to give them. I don't know what a fulfilling life is, but it's not all about ourselves, is it? No, I definitely wouldn't have answered that then, and I'm probably embarrassed to say that I wouldn't have answered it like that. But it's probably no different to anyone else on the podcast.
100%. And it's really interesting because, like I said, I've read those 10 points that you put on that recent blog that you put, which was really fascinating to read, and it interesting to hear you say it. And that's one of the reasons I asked, because I think similar. Like the first thing that would come to my mind maybe a few years back was exactly different to that. You think that's people's automatic answer, but when you're in business and when you're doing things you go, yeah, what's the future? Well, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and blah blah blah. But the first thing that comes to your mind then was, I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father, and that is my main priority, because ultimately, when it all said and done, like you said, all the things that we can go through life and achieve is surrounding people by the people that you love.
It's a bit like, we're hypocrites at times. When we immerse ourselves in business, we're hypocrites, because why are you doing it? I'm doing it for my family. Why are you doing it? So I can do this, so I can do that, so I can provide them with all those sort of things. And you know what? What most people, they want your time. In a positive way, they want your time. And we're hypocrites because we're doing all of this, but it's like, well, you haven't got time to sit and have breakfast with your children. It's like, come on. Yeah. That's what's important. Because at some stage we're all going to stop working, and what pays the bills pays the bills. But yeah, I think those sorts of things. And I'm a hypocrite, because if you'd asked me that question 10 years ago, you wouldn't have got the same answer. But that's the answer now. You only asked me the question just now, so I'll give you the answer.
I love it, and I love that. That's because, like I said, for someone that's always been ambitious and always striving, always on that treadmill and 100 mile an hour, spinning the plate, blah, 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 all them things. One of the things I've taken from especially from this episode, but probably over the course of the podcast and the people I've spoke to, is actually not that, don't stay on that treadmill too much, because just appreciate what's around you, and hence why I'm trying to be more present as much as I possibly can. I have to check in with myself. I am on the phone. I am doing that when I'm with the kids, and I'm like, I need to check in and stop doing that.
Totally.
It's gold. Look, we're gonna finish up with our quick fire questions, as we always do, before we wrap up. So, first one piece of advice you give to your teenage self.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Love that. Who has inspired you in your career, and why?
there's two people that come to mind. And this not in a career. This is just in my life. One, before we moved. I must have been about 8 or 9 years old, and at school we had the school rugby team, and we were pretty good. And we were pretty good. We won most games, and he made me captain because one of the guys, I can't remember if he was ill or he wasn't there for that game, and one of the other kids said, "Why have you made Matt captain?" And he said, "I believe in him." The second one is my late uncle. My late uncle, when I moved to Seaford, I was about 11. Obviously, we're already not doing what great, or not really knowing what to do. New town, is he going to go off the rails and stuff like that? My late uncle, he was very well known local. John Darling. He's well known for photography, writing, shooting, fishing, those sorts of things, and at a time when I could have gone off the rails, he kind of put his arm around me, and he taught me how to catch a bass down at Cuckmere Haven. He took me lamping for rabbits, and he gave me time. And I say about lamping and rabbits. We walked down, if anyone knows the area, we walked down from Seaford Head, the car park, and we walked down Hope Gap. And we were lamping. It was about 10, 11 o'clock at night. So John's got an air rifle and I've got a headlamp. And I've got a headlamp, and he was great for improvising. So we had this is way before the high tech. So we had an old motorcycle battery with the wires going up to what was a motorcycle headlamp, and it was taped around his head. And he goes, "Right, we're going to go lamping and hopefully catch a bag of rabbit, and or two." And we walked all the way down towards Hope Gap from the car park, through the valley, and looking left and right, down, up, left and right. Nothing to be seen. And he did it slowly. It took about 30 minutes to get down to the bottom. And he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, they're obviously not out tonight, John." This was when I was about 11 years old. And he said, "You numbnut." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Right." He said, "I'll tell you why we've not had any rabbits, or not seen any rabbits." He said, "Firstly," he said, "we're walking down with the wind, and they can smell us. And secondly," he said, "that bloody zip of yours is twanging as we walk down the hill." I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" He said, "If I'd have told you, you wouldn't have learnt." So we then walked back up. Oh my God, it was like a scene from Watership Down. They were everywhere. And
Wow.
yeah, and it was just the fact that I reflect on that, and I mean, he died from a brain tumour way too young, but the fact that somebody had given me time, really.
Amazing. Well, can you recommend a book or a podcast to our listeners that has had an impact on your life?
I read or I listened to, because it would have been way too heavy for me to read it and I'd have put it down, but I listened to 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And I think it's a magnificent book, absolutely magnificent book. I know he's got some kind of right-wing sort of views at times, but some of it is just years and years of collation of data and information from various sources, and I think it's a fantastic book, absolutely fantastic book.
Brilliant. That's on the list. Final one, mate. What's your one rule for living a fulfilled life?
Can I give you two?
You can.
The first one is actually from that 12 Rules to Life, and that is judge yourself from the person that you against the person you were yesterday, not who someone else is today.
Brilliant.
And that's one. And then the second thing is give more than you take.
Brilliant. Mate, what a way to round up. I'm a little bit blown away, to be honest. What a brilliant episode. It's going to be a reason why this is going to be the longest recorded episode that I've done. Because, mate, I could sit here and talk to you for another 2-3 hours. It was absolutely brilliant. And thank you for just showing so much vulnerability, openness with me, and sharing your absolutely incredible journey through business, but the amazing challenges you've done and the impact that you've had on so many people's lives with what you've achieved. And you're a real inspiration. And honestly, it's been an absolute honour to have you on and have this conversation. So, mate, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very, very much.
Mate, it's been awesome.
It's been good fun.
And that, as they say, is a wrap. This is the County Business Talks podcast, produced by H2 Productions.